Everybody, we are diving in deep today on cold calling. So I know for me personally, when I got started, cold calling was not natural. I definitely had to tune in, pay attention to what other people were doing, and try my best to make it sound natural. Now, with all of that to be said, we will be going in deep today on some of the key things that Grant and I have both learned cold calling over the years. So very excited about this show. I believe that anybody watching can get something out of this. And let's dive in on this, Grant. Let's talk about this a little bit. What has cold calling done for your business? Let's just start out with that.
Yeah, and actually, even to that point, to be completely honest, cold calling has not particularly, that particular call method has not been huge for us. I actually don't do a lot of cold calling. I do a lot of mail marketing. And I think this will be one of the good reasons why you'll be able to get a lot out of it as a listener today, because Daniel's done so much more on that side. I've done a lot of cold calling. I bought houses off of cold calling, but we like direct mail and inbound calls. The point here is that either way, you're going to be talking to a seller for the first time who has no idea who you are, and you need to come off as the right option, right? And there are some things that people do that you sound new when you're talking on the phone, because you are trying not to, but it's just not working. And I think that one of the most valuable things that you can think about in a initial phone call with your seller is just having confidence in yourself. Having confidence that even if you don't know the right answer, you'll be able to find the right answer. I think that's a super valuable piece of information that a lot of folks disregard. Is that it's okay to not know the answer to something, right, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I first got started, that was definitely something that tripped me up. I was like, well, what if the seller asks me something and I don't have the right answer? I mean, that is a very common fear for us, is like, what if I don't have the right answer? I'll sound stupid. I won't sound like, I know what I'm doing. And one of the things, like, and I'm sure that you were about to touch on this, that I always move back to is just always have confidence that you can get the right answer. You're not always going to know the answer. So when a seller asks me something like, hey, what is the answer to this? And I don't know it, I just have a predetermined answer for all of those types of things. And that's like, hey, that's a great question. Let me ask my business partner that. Let me ask the title company that. So that way I don't have to lie and try and come up with an answer that's not real. Just say, hey, I don't have the answer to that, but I'll get it for you.
Well, and I say this time and time again, and I think it's such an important thing for people to really understand that just being honest, straight up, just truthfulness is the right thing to do. So you should be doing that with your, just in general with your business anyway. You should be just being honest because it's the right thing to do. But B, there's a self-serving aspect of that. And the fact of the matter is that sellers are so used to having somebody lie to them over the phone. They've got 14 other wholesalers that are acting like they're the ones that are going to buy the house. They've got 14 other people that are, well, I'm just doing this because I like helping people. I'm so happy to help you. That's why I do real estate. All these people that are feeding them with lies, and whether or not they would call you out, even internally, there's a disconnect that they feel. And honesty and being genuine, I have found, is from a self-serving aspect here, just such an incredibly more successful tactic to just tell them what you're doing. Tell them what you're about. Tell them who you are, where you're going. Because if you're confident enough to expose your weak points, that says a lot, right? And people are willing to work with somebody who's confident enough in what they do that they're even willing to say where they're weak. And when you give them those honest answers, well, I'll tell you, they're so used to being fed with all these other lies from everybody else, it feels right to them. And oftentimes you'll get a deal for under what their other offers are, purely because you're the only one that actually told them what they're doing. You know what I mean?
On my side, yeah, because whenever you expose vulnerability like that and you're willing to open up and tell somebody, hey, I don't know, that is a sign of vulnerability. And a lot of the times when I've worked with sellers, that vulnerability of not trying to pretend like you know the answer, because I've seen people try to come through and pretend like they know the answer, and it's A, not right, and B, it does not work out. It's just not the right thing to do. So whenever you just flat out are honest with the seller and you're like, hey, I really like that question. It's a great question. I'll have to get that answer for you. I don't have the right answer for you, but I've got someone in my network that can definitely get that answered for me. Whenever I use use that, a lot of the times it opens up the seller to realizing that, hey, you're not there as a bullshit artist. You're not there to just kind of do whatever you have to do or say whatever you have to say to get the deal. You're there to truly answer the questions that these people have, and they oftentimes have a much higher level of respect for you when you have that straightforward, raw, open honesty with them.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to. So I think Daniel, you've read. Oh my gosh, what is the book? The ex-hostage negotiator.
Oh, you're talking about Never Split the Difference?
Never Split the Difference. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Have you read that one?
Yeah, so I've read Never Split the Difference. I had quite a few key takeaways that I learned from there. There was quite a few, and I'm going to butcher whatever they're called. I want to say analogies, but for whatever reason I'm thinking parables, but it doesn't matter. He had a lot of experience going through and doing things, and some of it I saw applicable and I liked and I would like to use in my real estate business, and there were other things that I was like, you know what, that might not necessarily be for me. But all those things taken into consideration, I'd recommend anybody read it.
Absolutely, I agree. And it's kind of one of those things that it's a really dangerous spot. Let me just give you a pre-warning for this is one of the things that we're entrepreneurs, we're salespeople, we're hustlers, we're ready to work hard, and a lot of times, kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? The bad side of that coin is hubris. Is this like complete just conceit and like everything that I do is right and blah blah blah, and you want to brag about this or that or the other and kind of beat your chest. But the one of the things that I'll warn you against, if you find yourself starting to get into this realm, I know a lot of high-end dudes. I've been very fortunate to get connected with a lot of high-end dudes, and one of the consistent negative aspects of that is that there comes this time when they're the only one that's right, and like everybody else is an idiot, right? And so it took me a couple of years with working at the beginning of my business, as I started to know a lot of these high-end dudes and recognizing that pattern, to realize, wait a minute, hold on. It does not matter how experienced somebody is. You have something to learn from them, okay? Because everybody does things differently, and everybody has this beautiful mind of creativity and blah, blah, blah. I say all that to say, with that book, Never Split the Difference, I wholeheartedly agree with Daniel. There's some things in there that, frankly, I think are outdated. I don't think that they work anymore. Right. I think that it was really good. It's the whole guru mindset that we're so familiar of in real estate, where somebody does really well in the 90s and then they make a bunch of money like selling you what they did in the 90s for the next decade or 2 decades or whatever, when maybe that doesn't work so much anymore. So there's some of that in there. However, there's some really good principles, and one of them that's in there is talking about the audit, the accusation audit. Right? Like what do you think that the person that you are negotiating with might say as like a rebuttal, as a problem they're going to have either with you or with your numbers or with your contracts, and trying to get those things out in the open ahead of time, kind of jumping in front of the gun and saying like, hey, I know this is what it sounds like. Because if you can almost feel like you're a mind reader to them, and like all of the problems that they came up with or that they continue to come up with, like you're addressing that problem before they have a chance to think about it, it's going to be a huge way for you to get ahead of the curve, for you to get ahead of these accusations, for you to nip these problems in the bud, so that they don't come back and become an issue where they're asking you a question that you don't know the answer to. But if you are able to and confidently address that before they have that chance to do so, and then they give you a question that you don't know the answer to, and you're so confident to say, hey, that's actually a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I know where to get it, right? This shows resourcefulness. This shows that you're listening to them, and it shows that you're willing to be honest with them. And then let me finish up on this, and then I'll let Daniel, I know you're about to say something. The other part of Never Split the Difference that I think is applicable there is I actually changed my sales pitch based off of this particular principle in Never Split the Difference, because I was, previous to reading that book, I was the guy that said, never give them a chance to say no, right? We're going to ask only yes questions, so that at the end of it, if they say no, then you're like, well, man, you've been saying yes this whole time. Like, why are we all of a sudden getting a no now? But never split the difference changed my mind on that. And the parable, to your point, I think it's an applicable way of saying that they used was, think about when you get a call from a telemarketer, if you've ever picked any of those things up, and they're like, how would you like to save $16,000 a month on your electricity bill? And it's so obvious that they're just asking you this stupid question that you have no way to say anything but yes to. Like, how good does it feel to be like, no, it would not, no, and like hang up on them, right? No feels great, and no is empowering. So I actually switched my pitch to look for an early no, because as he says it, and as some of the great negotiators that I know say it, no is where the negotiation starts, right? When you get your first no, now is when you know that things are starting. But you want to approach this in such a way that they know they have the power to say no, because that is very empowering. But similarly, they need to see that you have the power to say, I don't know, right? Similarly to that, they need to see that you're not the guy that just has the answer for everything, unless you just happen to be the guy that has the answer for everything, which more than likely you're not, right? And so when you give them that first, I don't know, just like it's so super empowering to them for them to be able to say no, because they know that they have power back, they feel good about that. Okay, we're actually listening to each other. The first time you say, I don't know, is the first time that they realize, okay, maybe this guy's for real. Maybe this guy's really trying to help me out here. Daniel, what's your position on everything I just talked about there?
On your side, like some of the key things that you were saying in the accusation audit is something that I did not just for my cold calls, because I find it to be extremely important for that, but I need to break down exactly how that accusation audit works and works for me, because I find it to be extremely important. So I would do this for all of my marketing. And in my opinion, when you're doing your marketing, you're gonna find a niche that you're targeting. Whether for me, like I was very heavy into pre-foreclosures, very heavy into probates, vacant properties, and then water lists. Those were the primary key motivators that I was consistently targeting. Well, whenever I go to write a mail piece, or I know that I'm going to be calling that type of list, I go through, as you call it, the accusation audit, as brought to light in the Never Split the Difference book. The key things that I would do, and this wouldn't be a short, slow process. I would spend, on average, at least 4 or 5 hours, and oftentimes 2 or 3 days. And I had to have a whiteboard right there in front of my desk. And what I would go through on that whiteboard and do is I'd say, the person that I'm about to call, they are in pre-foreclosure. What are some of the things that I know that they're going to want? What are some of the things that I definitely know they're going to need? What are some of the things that are going to be objections, like I'm not going to work with you because of X? And what are some of the things that I can do to solve their problems? So if I've already thought through all of that for 24, 48, 72 hours, and I've got all that sitting in front of my whiteboard on my desk, all I am doing now is just imprinting all of that onto my mind. What is this person going to want? Well, they're definitely going to want someplace to live. They're about to go into foreclosure. An obvious answer is they're going to need someplace to live. I mean, that's more of a need than a want. They're probably going to want some cash. They're probably going to want some more time. These are things that I already know that is likely going to come out of this conversation. So now that I know these things, I already come through my head with all of the possible things that I can think of to help this person out. Like, for instance, Grant, hey, I'm about to go to foreclosure. I don't have a place to live. How do I solve that problem? Well, whenever I have the seller hit me with that, then I already have a predetermined list of possible answers, so that way I'm not stuttering and stumbling and not really able to come up with an answer for that. Whenever I have a seller that says, hey, or like you were saying, the accusation audit, I already know the likely things that this person is going to have problems with when I'm on the phone. So one of the things I might do is ask an open-ended question. So write this part down. I think this to be very important. And it's just the open-ended question piece. I always like to ask open-ended questions that I can ask that don't end with a yes or a no. Questions that I can ask that end up with an explanation. And those explanations almost come with more details to help the deal go along. So I'll ask a question like, have you figured out where are you planning to move? By asking that question, I already know that that's a need that they're going to want, and I open that conversation up. So I think the accusation audit's very important. What are your thoughts on that, Grant?
Yeah, I absolutely. I'm glad that you're transitioning us into really some of the practicalities of what we're going to put on the acquisition audit. Let's give them a couple of these open-ended questions for discovery, because one of the things that we would like to know from you, and again, I say this time and time again, like, you guys are the hero here. You guys are the ones that need to, you're the protagonist. Our job, Daniel and my job, is to remove as many obstacles as we humanly can between you and your success, right? So what I want to make sure that we're doing is we're being applicable to you. I'd like to kind of know where you view yourself in your career as, beginner, intermediate, expert, whatever that might be. My lovely little boy is watching a show here and enjoying that, so you may hear him. But I think that's something that's going to be very helpful for you guys. I just realized I'm blending into my black background here. Is having some questions that you can ask at the beginning of this kind of discovery period of how to stop sounding like a newbie on the phone, that are going to give you the pieces of data that you need to continue to sound like the professional, the guide, the consultant for them. Okay. So one of the questions that Daniel just brought up here is, I think, a great question. When you're looking at a pre-foreclosure lead, which you guys need to be much more in tune with coming up in this next market. And I'm actually doing an encore session of our pre-foreclosure webinar that I did on Tuesday of last week, which will be tomorrow night at 7. So if you want a link to that, hit me up. It's actually sponsored by the NTAREI, which is a local investment group here in Dallas. But since we can't meet in person, he's approached me to do kind of a mini series of how to thrive in the downturn, and we got a really good response from the pre-foreclosure one. So we're going to redo that one tomorrow. It's $20 to join in. Let me know if you want to get the link, and I'll try to put the link up on comments here later. But pre-foreclosure is going to be huge, and Daniel and I have both done very well in pre-foreclosures, and he hit the nail on the head. Where are you looking to move? Right. Another way of saying that I like using with pre-foreclosures is, what's the plan? Right. One of the things that we want to know is, if they have a plan, how can you best fit inside of it to get them where they want to go? And if they do not have a plan, let's get that out in the open, both for us and for them to realize that they don't have a plan. Right. Does that make sense, Daniel?
It does. And one of the things that I like about this, and one of the things that, we're talking about this from how to get away from being a beginner, and we're coming up with this great overall blanket of things to do. I would like to move into, at some point in time during this, is the step-by-step kind of breakdown of how to pull this call off. Like, all right, we're starting out cold. Let's start out. How are we going to introduce the call? How are we going to move forward? Here's kind of where
if I can chime in and you tell me if this fits into what you're thinking. What I'm thinking is, let's talk about some actual questions that we can ask for discovery questions, because I'm assuming there's a lot of folks here that are going to be having first conversations or first 100 calls kind of thing. Let's give you some ideas of what to get that. Secondly, I would like to draw out Daniel's version of accusation audit and my version of an accusation audit, because we actually have both done this for our marketing, and it is a week-long process. You are going to spend a long time really thinking this stuff out. And I want to talk about how, when you take that accusation audit, if you have these proper questions that we're giving you, you're going to be able to edit and weaponize that accusation audit and pick up on keywords you would not have picked up on before. And then I think we finish up with, let's give some actual scripted phrases that you might open a conversation with or whatever, and some things to avoid saying on that call that are just kind of sellout options for, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Does that fit in with you, Daniel?
It does. And one of the things that I want everybody on here to watch right now is that Grant and I are very different on the phones. There's very different personality types, very different approaches to what's going on. So while you are watching this, remember that things that we're giving you are somewhat guides, but they're not hard set, cut in stone rules that you have to follow. We all have our own style, so don't shy away from being yourself, because the second you try and be somebody else, the second that you're going to come across brash or rehearsed on the phone. Just remember that you are you, and you are just enough to do exactly what you need to do. Don't have to be somebody else. So take what we're saying and kind of adapt it to your style, and you'll perform much better on the phone when you're able to naturally have that conversation and not try to pretend to be something you're not, because that will come across wrong.
I love that.
And your personality will connect with the right people.
Exactly. You'll find your tribe. And again, Daniel buys houses differently than I do. I buy houses differently than he does. I buy houses differently than my partner does. And he buys houses differently than me. But we are all very successful with our conversion rates. So look for things that might fit for you and be real to yourself. It goes back to my initial point of honesty and genuineness. Truthfulness is going to buy way more houses than scripts are, right? Being you is going to buy way more houses because people invest in you. Rapport, I steal this phrase. There's a couple, Daniel, that I steal from you that I love. One is rapport has bought more houses than money ever has. If you come off as genuine, then the seller will feel that. I want to give a real quick shout out. What is this? Balyong. I'm sorry if I've butchered your last name there. It says, you guys are the only show that I have an alert for. Man, I appreciate that. And similarly, if anybody else is watching this and you appreciate kind of the approach that Daniel and I have, we've got two different looks on how to be high converting, high performing individuals in real estate. Make sure that you're subscribing to the Propelio channel on YouTube. Subscribe to it, and then there's a little bell that you got to hit, and it'll let you know when we're going live with this kind of stuff, because we're working real hard to get some real legitimate conversation starters and pieces of information that are going to actually affect your bank account in front of you, rather than, and that effect should not be that the bank account has to go lower, right? What we're trying to do is we're giving you free information that's going to allow you to get more money in that bank account. Even also, if you look at like the Propelio Academy, if you guys haven't checked out the Propelio Academy and you like how this education style is of just freely giving information as a gift to you, check out propelio.com/academy. There is an entire academy there on all these different things. So Ruel, I appreciate you saying that. And then like Mina and Kim have both said that, you know, their thanks for sharing this info and saying that it's great advice. And I do want to finish out this with, and Matthew as well. Miranda put a great quote here, which says, think about the person you would like to work with if you were in their situation and be that person. I think that's a really good way. When I talk about being honest, when I talk about coming off as genuine, I think it's a really good way to approach this. This is one of the things that I would encourage you guys to do when you're trying to decide if you're doing the right thing. This is kind of an ethical shortcut. Like, am I doing an ethical thing here? Am I doing the right thing? Or am I being a good salesperson? Or am I following up as I should? Imagine somebody who you have an immense respect for ethically. Imagine somebody that you have an immense respect for, you know, salespersonly, because I like making up words. And then imagine them doing what you were planning on doing and see if that seems out of character for them. And if it does, it will, you know, typically that becomes a very clear answer for you of whether or not you're doing what you should be doing. So Miranda, I really enjoy you pointing that out. So Daniel, I'll pass it back over to you. But again, you know, guys, we appreciate the comments. We want to know how things are going. So please interact with us. We want to help you get there. Share, like, all that kind of stuff. So let's jump into it. So Daniel, let me pass this back over to you. And where do you want to start first? Do you want to start off with, now that we've kind of talked about the different personality types, do you want to go ahead and give them some open-ended questions that you've used that have successfully helped you get the answers you need to help this person get to a solution that makes sense for their situation?
So open-ended questions, and that really is going to really curtail into what is the motivation for the person I'm calling. Like if I'm calling an absentee owner list, my questions will be slightly different because they're going to be tailored to that motivation. If I'm calling a pre-foreclosure list, they're going to be tailored for that. Like if I'm calling a vacant property list, one of the key things that I have a question for on the vacant properties, if I know the property is vacant, I'll say, are you concerned about vandalism or squatters at your property? You know that the copper right now is being sold at a very high price per pound, and properties are being targeted specifically for vacancy so the copper can be stolen. Has that ever concerned you, and are you properly insured for that instance? And if by doing that, what I'm able to do with that question is, if they did not have that fear, which is a rightful fear that they truly should have, this is an asset for them that's really sitting as a liability because it's just sitting there vacant. So what I'm able to do with that question is I'm able to bring to light a very realistic fear that they should have. If they don't have this fear, then they are doing themselves a disservice. And then I follow it up with are you properly insured for that type of instance? Because that right there gives me the ability to open up and be the expert and say, so for a property that's vacant, you're going to need something like a builder's risk policy. It's not your typical landlord policy. And this allows me to open the conversation up, build that rapport, educate them on the areas that they have exposure on. So even if they don't sell me the house, they at least are aware of how to protect themselves, and then I'll go through and explain to them why I'm willing to take care of this problem for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're saying that. That hits on a point that I want to, what we're going to do here is we want to give you guys, this is going to be a takeaway heavy episode where you're going to have a lot of takeaways that you may want to write down. Things like these questions that we're giving you, even though that one is a closed question, it typically is going to, closed meaning it's a yes or no answer. It opens the door for a conversation, right? And that's part of kind of a hybrided open-ended conversation. But I want you
So
to
let
write
me-
things like that down. I want you to write those questions down for yourself so that you can remember them later. Here's something else that I want you to write down is we're going to go over some
I want to add
like
on to that
general.
because I think it's important. You were saying that, you know, it's a closed-ended question, but it was kind of a two-part question. The front side of it is, you know, I guess you could say yes or no, but I was like, what are your concerns right now for the vandalism and stuff like that? That right there opens it up and gets them to start speaking on it. And then the insurance side of it is definitely a yes or no question. It's like, are you properly insured for that property? But what I have found when I'm speaking with people that own vacant property is that they are completely unaware that there is a specialty type of insurance for that property. And by doing that, I can have a quick 5 to 10 minute long conversation with them that really opens up their eyes to how exposed they are at risk.
Yes.
And by opening their eyes to the exposure at the risk, they start realizing that they need to take action.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where exactly I want to take that principle because it is so valuable, right? Even though they could answer yes or no to these things, that is so valuable that it's one of the 10 commandments of our general principles of not sounding like a newbie on the phone, right? So here's our, I'm going to write this as our anti newbie commandments, right? We're gonna have a couple of things that I want you to always be running your filter through. Number one is honesty. Okay, honesty above all else. Above all else. And I'm going to encourage you guys to write this phrase down. This is a core value, and I know it's very corporate-y, but hey, if you want to run a company that's going to buy houses for you rather than a support system that forces you to continue buying houses, you got to kind of have some corporate-y stuff in place. Every company that I own includes the core value of this, and I want you guys to write this down and steal it from me. I want you to put this into your lockbox of your heart and filter all of your business through this. We are going to do the right thing, especially when it is not in our favor, okay? And it's those exact words I want you to write down because the words are important. We're going to do the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor, is phrased very specifically because we're going to do the right thing always. Your employee, you, whoever, when you get faced with a difficult decision when you're working with a seller, because at the end of the day, our job is to find a solution that's best for the seller that also fits into what we need to get out of that house. That's our job, right? And so at the end of the day, if you say we're going to do the right thing always, it's really easy for your staff or even yourself to get to a hard decision where you're going to make a bunch of money if you do this thing that may not necessarily be the right decision, but you can say, well, we always do the right thing, so this time I'm going to make $60,000, right? We're going to do the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor, means that you can only satisfy that core value in the 4 or 5 hardest times of your career that a situation might pop up, okay? So I've been corrected. It is newbie with an IE, my bad. So honesty above all else is going to be the principle one of not sounding like a newbie. Okay, we're going to do this the right thing, especially when it's not in your favor, is also a core value that, hey, it doesn't hurt to share that that's something that you feel is valuable about your company in that time. The second part of that is exactly what Daniel was talking about here. Have you considered the vandalism aspect of this house, a vacant property? Okay, no. Well, that's a yes or no question. Okay, well, let me teach you about proper insurance. Here's the thing. And I could go 2 ways on what I'm going to name this one, but I'm going to go with I'm just going to write down consultative approach. Okay, here's the thing. You need to be helping them get where they need to go. Just like earlier I said, like my job as an educator is to make sure that we're removing as many obstacles between you and success as humanly possible. Your job as a homeowner, as a home buyer, is to listen to the situation that your seller is in, and if you can solve their problems creatively, or even if it's easy, if it's just like, well, your problem solved by me giving you $70,000, boom, here you go. If you can solve their problems and get them where they need to go, then you are showing them the respect that they need to work with you. Okay, they're going to pick up on that. So you need to figure out where they're at. Sometimes that's going to be yes or no. Sometimes that's going to be open-ended. And then you're going to be a consultant to them because you're the expert. You're the person that sits here at noon on a Wednesday watching lessons about how to properly take down properties. Not them. They don't know the ins and outs of all of this. They don't know what a vacant property is or a builder's risk insurance policy is or what whatever intricacy you want to. They don't know that. This may be the only house that they've ever worked with. Well, you have studied, you have bought houses, you are trying to buy houses. You know more, even if you are a super beginner, you know more than the average homeowner and home seller is. So one of the principles and this is where I was saying I could write it down either way, is I say consultative approach because that is kind of how we view our sales. But I also want to kind of give this a sub point that all sales are education. Okay? You are educating them how to interact with you. You are educating them with what their options are. You are educating them with what the results of their decisions are going to be. And this is the core of that consultative approach that Daniel and myself and all of our staff, this is how we train our staff to buy with our acquisitions teams, is to take that consultative approach, ask the questions, figure out their situation, see what they do and don't know, and then take the opportunity to show them the answers to that. And you know what? Sometimes and I know that this has happened for Daniel because I've gotten the call that he's like, look, I can't help this person. Can you? Right? We do that, or we have done that in the past. Now that we've kind of expanded our abilities, that's less than or fewer and fewer times that happens. But man, if their best option, if they're really in a best situation to just put that thing up on the market and sell it for retail, and that's what they really need, maybe that's not your thing. But you're going to be willing to help them with that and consult with them and show them that. And that willingness of consultation and that willingness of education, A, cements you as an expert in the industry, and B, gives rapport and shows them that you're there to help them, right? Show them you're there to help them. Don't tell them you're there to help them. Too many newbies. This is going to be coming at the end of my things not to say that completely sell you out. And maybe it's just to me because I hate this phrase. But when somebody's asking because you've made it sound too good to be true, and they're like, well, why are you in this? And you say, well, I just really love helping people. That is telling them, right? A, that's not why you're in it, and that's a lie. But B, if you can show them that you love helping people by having a consultative approach and educating them on their options and educating them on how to work with you and educating them that you are their best option, your possibility of converting that lead goes through the roof. Daniel, would you agree with that?
I have always agreed with that. And some of the things that I'd like to point out for those that are watching right now is there are multiple different personality types. And if you have the personality type that's just very charismatic, very, very engaging in your conversation, and it's very easy for you to flow with people, that alone will make your cold calling so much smoother. From there, you really just need to learn to practice how to get to the yes, how to get to the close, how to get to the paper signing. But for everybody else out there that doesn't have that very natural charismatic approach, I'm going to give you my opinion on how to get beyond that. And that is just coming from a straight education piece. Like, I am not there to close you. I am not a closer. I am not a con artist that's trying to convince you to do something that you shouldn't do. I always came at it because I'm not that charismatic person. I'm not that very joyful person that's on the phone. The way I would get the rapport built is through my knowledge. Like, I know of 12 different ways of buying and selling a house, acquisition, disposition strategies. And since I am aware of those, when I'm sitting down on a phone call with the seller, I am not having to drive that seller down a path that fits my bucket, because my bucket is an ocean. I have a very wide range of ways to help this person. So I let the seller self-select. I start asking questions to help determine, like, what is this seller's motivation? Some of the things that I'm looking for is, what is their priorities? And there's three things that we can typically move from. How fast do you want to do it? Do you need top dollar? Like, is that your primary concern? And do you have to have cash? And those are the three things that I want to figure out, is like, what of those three things are the most important? And the key takeaway has almost always been, of the three, what are the two that are most important to you? Speed, top dollar, or cash. And that'll allow me, and I'm not going to just ask a question straightforward like that, what's the most important to you? But I'll start asking questions to figure out what of those three are the top priorities and motivators. And then I can see from there what options of the 12 that I know of for acquisition and disposition can apply to them, and I'll start educating them on what those questions are, and then I'll let them self-select. Now, that's not everybody's approach, but that's how I come with it, because I can sound very authoritative, I can sound very educational, but I can also keep my mouth shut for 90% of the conversation, because I just constantly have the seller talking.
Yep, and that is consistently one of the most successful. So here's the thing: is like, when I'm in a sales situation, I have a cardinal sin, and I talk way too much, right? Just in general application of general knowledge of what you should be as a salesperson, you need to shut up. But here's the thing. We know, like we said earlier today, you're going to buy houses differently than I do, and you need to find what your style is, right? So what we're giving you today is going to be some kind of baseline instructions that will help you to have something to build a foundation off of, because we're going to say, hey, look, here's some things, or we have been saying, and we will continue to say, here's some things that we know are successful, okay? Go try them. See how they work for you, and try them out a lot, and shift them until you start really kind of fitting into your niche and seeing why people are saying yes to you. Because if I was being trained by some sales coach, they would be like, Grant, shut up. You're talking yourself out of the sale. However, I convert 85+% of the leads that I talk to, as long as they're qualified leads, right? Like I'm not going to convert like a take me off your list kind of lead, but of the qualified leads that I talk to, I have an 85% plus conversion rate. I have a cardinal sin of talking too much, but it works for me because I do know enough to present as an authority and be consultative and do all of these things to help them get where they're going, right? Now, that's not going to be everything and everybody, and especially right here at the beginning, when you're still trying to formulate all of that knowledge, that's not going to be something that you can lean on. You do need to shut up, most likely, unless you are just super charismatic and you are able to just make friends with everybody, which a lot of people are. This is one of the reasons why I love so much working with Daniel, is because we are so different. Now, my partner, Ronnie, is the same way. He asks nothing but questions. He shuts up and he kills it, right? John is kind of a meld of the two. So here's something that I would encourage you to look at, right? So Daniel mentioned this a second ago on how to kind of analyze where this deal is going to fit for you. And I think that this is a little bit, this is kind of on the sidelines of the topic that we're talking about today, but I think it's going to help you to have the confidence that you need in this industry. So I actually at one point in time had a little trifold that I had created for people, and as a matter of fact, I might be able to even pull that up for you guys. But I don't like having printed material, so I only used this thing for a matter of weeks probably. But I think that it's a valuable way to have it at least in your head as far as what you are and aren't able to offer to these people. So like Daniel mentioned, hey, what do you have to leverage, seller, right? And what do you want? That's what he's trying to figure out, right? So here's things that you're going to be looking at. To get full price, in other words, to get like a retail price on this house, full price, you're buying it for 100% of value. They need to have time and a loan to leverage, right? A loan. Well, let me just classify that as owner financing, since
Are we
this is for
tying
y'all.
this
Y'all
back
are
to
going to
cold
understand
calling?
that. I'm sorry?
Are we tying this back to cold calling?
Yes, that's where I was saying this is somewhat on the sideline, but you mentioned like listening to the cold call and having those options to consult with them. So what I'm trying to do is give them, because they don't know, right? They don't know what time means. They don't know what equity means always. But if we can give them at least the idea of, oh, here's a trigger word that person just said, so I can lead them down this road of, hey, you know what? You just told me you've got this. So here's how we're going to be able to help you, and I'm going to contact this guy to get it. I think this will be fairly quick, but this is going to be helpful for that confidence in there. If you'll just bear with me on this, it'll be fairly quick. The other thing that they're going to want is all cash, right? So if they want cash, they need to have equity, right? And they need to be willing to take a discount. And the other thing is if they are, a fast close. Right? Oops, I did that dumb. Then again, they've got to be willing to take a discount, and they either have to be willing to give you a owner financed deal, or they've got to have that plenty of equity in there, right? So this is a little bit of a butchering because I don't have the thing up there and I'm trying to remember it all. But what I want to give you guys is, again, if you are watching this because you are a newbie and you're trying not to sound like a newbie anymore, you may understand what wholesaling is, but you may not necessarily understand what these other things are. So when we start talking about having a consultative educational approach and you don't know what you're educating on, that can be very difficult. What we want to kind of get in front of you, what I'm looking to do here is saying, look, if they want all cash, they got to give you something for that cash, right? Like you're going to have to either have a ton of time. That would be another thing here, because if they want all cash and they're willing to wait for it for 6 months, well, you can list it and try and get the cash from there and pull it. Or they need to give you a big discount, which they need equity to have, right? If they want full price on their deal, that's cool. I'll give you 100%, but you're going to have to be willing to work with me with a long option period, and you're going to need to hold the note for me, right? And if they want to close fast, either you're going to have great terms on it on that. So either we've got a really good owner financed term here, or you're willing to give me a really significant discount so I can go get the cash and close on that deal. You can kind of qualify those things in your mind and very quickly go through your batting order. Even if you don't know how to do those strategies, now you're able to educate them and just say, look, hey, here's the thing, right? You want full price on your property. And I'm going to be real frank with you. My specialty is really in paying cash, but if I pay cash, I got to have a discount on it. But I know some guys that are the top guys in the nation on this. So here's what we're going to do. Let me give you kind of a brief introduction of what I'm talking about, and then I'm going to reach out to them and we'll come back to you and help you get through this. Does that work with you? You see what I'm saying? Like if you've got that kind of confidence to just approach like, hey, I don't know what this is. No cash buyer is going to be able to give you what you want, but I know where to get the answer. This kind of graph is going to help you get through that. Does that make sense, Daniel, as to why I wanted to go down that road?
Yeah.
I hope. All right. So let's finish up. I want to give one more question. I want to give maybe two, actually. I want to give two questions. For the opening questions, which I have changed from open-ended questions to opening questions. These are things that you can ask every cold call and every inbound call that you get from mailers. These are things that you can ask to get a good idea of this. Then I want to transition quickly into let's show you how to do an accusation audit, because I want everybody here as homework to do an accusation audit. Comment here. I would like to actually propose something for us real quick. So comment here if you are willing to have an accountability buddy, right? I would like for you to comment, I'd like one, accountability buddy here, willing to help, something like that. Let's get some comments we got a bunch of people watching on Facebook and YouTube. Here's what I want you to do. If you're about to comment that you're ready to be an accountability buddy and somebody else has already commented, look if somebody and reply to that and say, you and me. We're together, you and me, right? So look through from the top and see which one is first unclaimed. And if everybody is claimed, then start a new one and say, I want an accountability buddy. And then the next person can claim you as their account. You guys need to check with each other in, what's today, Wednesday? I want you to check with each other by Tuesday of next week, because I want you to put proper time and effort into this exercise we're gonna give you of actual homework. And I want you guys to hold each other accountable for that, all right? So volunteer here, put an emoji, raise your hand, comment as a reply to somebody who's already volunteered, and then get with each other on, through Facebook Messenger or whatever that is. Join the Propelio group on Facebook, which will be helpful, and you can propose getting an accountability buddy system there as well, because I want you guys to do this exercise. I really do. It's going to be very helpful for your conversion rate and not sounding like a newbie. Here's two questions that I want you to include on this before we get into that actual exercise. The first question that I will ever ask every time that I get a phone call is, tell me what's going on. What's the situation? Right? Some version of this question. It doesn't have to be that phrase. Tell me what's going on. So what's the situation? So what's causing you to look to sell? That's actually the one that I fall back on most, because it's also implanting the idea that they have called you because they're going to sell the property, right? We want to find as many opportunities to really restate the objective here, which is you and I are talking because you and I are about to have a business transaction, which is you selling that property to me. So as many things as we can do to point back to that relationship, the better. So, what's causing you to look to sell right now, right? Even throwing right now is implanting the idea we're getting something done now. So that is an excellent, they will vomit information at you. That is always my very first question. And I love it because it'll give you a lot of information about where they are and how you can help them. Daniel mentioned a principle earlier that I believe that I don't know what his question is to get this, but I'm actually glad that he said that, because it's my next favorite question in the entire world, which is, do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs? Okay, and I'm just going to say the rest because I write so slow. Do you have any, but you should write this down. This is an actual script. These words are specific. Do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs, like a broken down car or a medical bill, something like that might need to get paid off? Okay, that is a question that I will always try to ask before any kind of offer numbers come out, because it is a very telling question. Because if they say, yeah, I do, I've got a broken down car and its transmission is $2,500, they have now told you and they've told themselves that they only need $2,500 in cash to sell you this house, and the rest of that can be discussed as far as terms go, right? They have opened that door for you. even though they don't realize it. But later on, 10 minutes from now, you're going to give them an offer and you're going to say, look, you said that you need $2,500 right now. Let's bump that up. Let's give you $5,000 right now. Okay. So you got a little bit of money to walk away with, but you did really well with paying your house down and having some equity in this. And so here's what we're going to be able to do so that you actually make way more money on this property than anybody else would typically make on this, is I can buy your house. And so what we'll do is we'll contract today. Again, definitive language is going to be a big part of being a newbie, or of not sounding like a newbie. I'm actually going to give one of these other principles right now, which is another principle is if I buy is not the takeaway. Okay, takeaways are important in sales, right? Sales mean takeaway is act now or else it's gone, right? Like you see that all the time. Like you have to do this thing or it's not going to work for you. I'm taking that that option away. Takeaways are good. That is not the time to apply it. If I buy is not the time to apply it. Everything in your conversation is when I buy, when we contract, when we close. Okay, you are always talking to definitives on that. Do you have any immediate and pressing?
Because I think it's important. The words that you're using and the words that you're choosing are very important to this phone call. When you are repeatedly saying, when I buy, when we contract, when we do this, you are speaking into existence a thought process that you intend to have. When you are using those types of words and you're repeating them throughout the call with the seller, those types of words naturally bring confidence because you are speaking as though this is already happening, which is a confident position to speak from. So when you use and choose your words, make sure you're using words that are in line with your goal, which is to buy that house. So when you are speaking with them, it's like, so when we buy this house, here are the ways that we can do it. We can do this all up front with the cash, but we will require a discount to make that happen. Or if you'd be willing to maximize your profit, we could do this on a payment plan, which will maximize your return. So it's always when we do something. It's never really if, it's always when, because it's just more confidence. You got to speak with that level of confidence.
Absolutely. And that leads into exactly one of the next questions that I was saying, or that I wanted to talk about, which is if they say, yes, I've got this immediate and pressing cash need that is X amount of dollars, not right then, but down the road, one of the other questions that you're going to want to ask that does present yourself as an authority. Because here's a principle that I took away. And I know that Daniel was big. And I mean, Daniel won what was the award you won in Rich Dad? Like you won the biggest, this guy is the biggest beast in the entire Rich Dad program award.
You got the Hall of Fame.
At one point in time, right? What was that?
So I got the Hall of Fame for 2013.
So I know that you're into Rich Dad or at least got started with it. I similarly, Rich Dad, the book started me off. And one of the big principles that I took away from that was understanding one of the chapters talks about people with money don't mind talking about money. It's the people that don't have money that get nervous about it, right? So that principle in and of itself is one of the things that we can very subconsciously present to people as we are discussing. Do not be afraid to ask any question that you want to ask, because I want you to ask. So what do you owe on this house? What's the interest rate? When did you get this thing, right? If you are nervous about that, they will be nervous about that, and that's what sells you out as being a newbie. But if you're confidently just approaching, hey man, this is the information I need to help you out, so give it to me, that subconsciously very much cements you as an authority here, right? So never back down from a difficult question. And as a matter of fact, approach the difficult questions with the tonality in your voice that it's just a normal question that you need to know, and it really helps cement you in there. So one of the things, the questions that's going to be of that nature is, actually before, I'm going to do this in order. So the first one was, do you have any immediate and pressing cash financial needs? That's a really good one. The other very early on question that you want to bring up before you really even hear their rapport stuff, before you even really hear what's going on and what their situation is and why they're selling, because you need to get into a situation. Well, long story short, just ask it before all of that. I'm going to try and keep this a little bit more brief. The next question is, are you willing? That's an interesting E. You willing to sell for what you owe? It's a very aggressive question. It really comes off as a pure fact-finding question as long as you say it really early. You can't say this after they've told you all the reasons why they want to move, because then it comes off as callous. Because if they've told you, I need to sell, I need to get $20,000 so that I can do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and then you say, well, would you be willing to sell for what you owe? They're like, did you not hear anything I just said? But if you put this right before hearing any of their like situational stuff, then they're not going to hold anything against you, because it's not like you've heard their need and now you're ignoring it. It's just part of your normal fact finding. And I'll tell you what, a lot of times people say yes to that question, and I'm able to say, okay, well, there you go. This is how I will buy your house then. If you're willing to sell it for what you owe, that means that you're giving me the best deal that you can possibly give me. I'm not here to rake you over the coals and beat you up and make you come to the closing with a check. So here's what we'll do for you is I will go ahead and put a contract together. I'm going to send it to you through DocuSign or through Right Signature or whatever thing you use. And that way, you know, I'm committing to you, right? And you don't have to keep making phone calls to all these other investors, and we're done here. Now, I'm going to have an inspection period because I haven't made it out to the house yet. So we'll go out and look at it. But as long as everything is you know, what you've said, I'm not scared of repairs. I'm not scared of things going wrong. That's why I do what I do. So don't worry about that. But this will kind of get us committed to each other. I know that you're being serious. You know that I'm serious, more importantly. And we'll come out and look at it. And once everything lines up, then we're good to go. Dude, you just got done buying a house in 25 minutes rather than 3 days worth of 5-hour appointments, simply because right from the beginning, you find out they're willing to sell it for what they owe. Okay, that's a sub-2 house. Just put a sub-2 contract together, get it contracted, get an option period, then inspect it. And if it's good, market it for sale and get some money off of it. I love that question. And then lastly, the one that you can ask after that, right? If they say no to that question, you kind of got to judge how they say no to it. But if it's like, oh, hell no, that's one thing. If it's a, oh, well, you know, I kind of got to get something from it. You know, I'm not sure that I could go that low kind of thing. Either way, you've got to work this question in. Are you willing? I'm gonna steal. I'm just gonna kind of say this again to save my handwriting. Are you willing to take your equity in installments? And here's the thing. Here's why this language matters. And this is the last question that I want to put out before we transition over actually showing you the exercise of the acquisition audit. Here's why this question matters. Are you willing to take your equity in installments? We have to understand that the human brain takes shortcuts psychologically, okay? When was the last time, Daniel, do you brush your teeth with your left hand or your right hand? I don't remember which hand you are.
I'm right-handed.
When was the last time you picked up your toothbrush and brushed your teeth with your left hand?
Do not know.
Right? Probably never. Similarly, if we were to ask you to go back in time and, you know, make a decision, completely not knowing what happened since then, but like go back in time and make a decision, whatever decision you want to choose. Oftentimes I'll bring up like a car purchase or a political voting. Would you make the same decision? And 99% of the time, the answer should be yes, right? What our brain has discovered is that our brain actually uses, I think, oh gosh, what is it? It's like 800 to 1600 or 1700 calories a day. Just the brain thinking. So thought processes chew up calories, and the more thought processes and decision factors that you put in front of somebody, the more worn out they get. This may have been in Never Split the Difference too, actually, as a matter of fact, talking about the experiments that they did as far as like your sugar content and ability to make good decisions and that kind of stuff. You get decision fatigue. So in response, what the brain has done is it says, once I go through all the efforts of deciding on something, I'm just going to stick to that decision. I don't need to critically think about that thing again because I already thought critically about it. And so I'm going to respect my old self. I'm not going to burn up calories every time deciding, well, should I put my toothbrush up with this hand or with this hand? Should I start on this side or with this side, right? I just know that that's how I do it, and therefore I don't have to burn a calorie on it, and I don't have to go hunt and gather those calories to survive. It's a really super important thing for us to understand, both on sometimes you want to trigger that shortcut, sometimes you want to avoid that shortcut. This question right here that I'm asking is, are you willing to take your equity in installments, is very important because we do things the right way with owner financing to the degree of I'm the one shaking the hands with the senators and House reps and getting laws, you know, moved and that kind of stuff. Like we're very above board. We're very involved. We're very like making sure that everything is by the book. I've read Dodd-Frank, right? We're going to do it right. I can't say the same about everybody who's done owner financing. So let me ask you this, Daniel. Have you ever heard of somebody whose great Aunt Sally got screwed over by some unscrupulous investor who paid their equity in installments versus have you ever heard of somebody whose great Aunt Sally got screwed over by some unscrupulous investor who owner financed their house for them and never made payments? Which one has actually been heard of? Does that question make sense, Daniel?
It's stated in a million different ways, but a lot of people have been screwed over by people that have this kind of knowledge and decide to abuse it.
And so the point being, people have people, if they've heard of this strategy, will have heard of it referred to as owner financing, or will have heard of it as referred to as seller financing. Okay. And they have already made up their mind on what their impression of that strategy is. Therefore, if you were to say, have you thought about owner financing your property? They know, I've heard of somebody getting screwed over by owner financing before, so I don't want to touch that. So I'm just going to default to my decision that I made in the past. I'm going to take my shortcut. I'm not going to burn calories, and I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm not going to do owner financing. However, if we bypass that shortcut decision and we trigger critical thinking again by using a phrase they have not heard of and that they have not already made a decision on, i.e., equity and installments, then we get to start the conversation from scratch. And we get to trigger an actual conversation where we are triggering their ability to think critically on this situation and giving them the information they need as an educational consultative process to where they're going to be way more likely to say yes to your owner financed offer. So drop some comments in there. I'd like to know, is that an eye opener for you? I think it should be, right? That sometimes you want to trigger it, sometimes you want to avoid the shortcut. You should know how that goes. So those are really good questions to understand their situation, to understand who it is that you're working with and what they're looking for from you. So unless, Daniel, if you've got another question that you want to dive into, how about we dive into the actual exercise of doing an accusation audit and what that looks like for you?
Sure. You ready? We're right at an hour, so how long do you anticipate that?
Here's what I would say is I would like to, so my approach is a 3-column approach. I think your approach is a 3 or 4 question approach. Let's just get those questions out. I think we already kind of knocked out some of the don't say these things because you're going to sound like a newbie, right? I think we've handled that on that side. And then we can, again, guys, if you guys have any questions, we are monitoring this. We are looking for this. We've got a couple of questions that popped up. We'll answer those. And Daniel, I don't know if you're backed up against it on time, but if you've got 15 or 20 minutes, would that be good for you, or should we kind of land the plane a little bit earlier?
We should definitely learn to land the plane within that hour mark.
Okay. Cool. All right. So let's do this then. I'm going to give you a option for an accusation audit that I use because it's literally 3 questions, and I think that you can do well. And I want you guys to do this exercise, right? And then what we'll do is we'll find another time down the way for Daniel to show us his version of the accusation audit. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a piece of paper. I want you to take it sideways, landscape. I want you to draw 2 lines on it. In this first line, you're going to write situation. In the second column, you're going to write fears. And the third column, you're going to write solutions. Okay? And I want you to literally write every single thing that you can think about that you think that this person that you're going to talk to may have in their situation. Okay? Are they stressed about work? Is their health in poor condition? Are they behind on payments? Do they have credit card bills? Are they, do they have medical bills? That kind of stuff. Literally everything you can think of that's going to shape and mold this person's situation, write that down in here. In the next column, what are they scared of? Why are they scared to do the deal with you, right? Are they scared that, like with a higher end property, they may be fearful that their neighbors are going to find out that they were in foreclosure, and so you need to, really work on your confidentiality and stuff. Maybe if they're not in that situation, maybe they're afraid that they're going to lose the house and never be able to buy another house. Maybe they're afraid they're going to be homeless. Maybe they're afraid, whatever the fears are. In this third column, this is where you're going to use both for your phone conversations and for your marketing, your mailers, your RVMs, whatever. I want you to find how you can, in one sentence here, answer as many of these things at once as possible. What are the words that you can use in one sentence that will handle as many of the fears and situations as possible at once? Because these are going to be your go-to sayings. These are going to be the things that allow you to show to them that you are an authority and able to help them. So that's the exercise I want you to do. And I want you to check back with your accountability buddy on Tuesday of next week, by Tuesday of next week, and share the answers. Part of what you're going to need to do with that is decide on a specific demographic. Okay, this cannot be for everybody. So you might decide on somebody that you actually want to market to, you might say, hey, I'm going to do my accusation audit based off of pre-foreclosure leads. You do your accusation audit based off of probates. And then we're going to get together and read them to each other and see if I might see something that you missed or you might see something that I missed. And that's going to help you get there. Once you've done this, it's going to really help you have your ear tuned when your seller tells you something in the conversation that may have fit in the situation or fear. This is a great way to tune your ear to hearing that, because now you're going to know you should be on the lookout for that stuff, and you need to go back and write it into your graph and find a situation or find a solution that's going to help with that. Okay. So I think that that's a great way, a great exercise to end on there. Daniel, do you want to hit any of these questions that came in? We've got a couple here. I know that you're answering some through text. We got one from Zach that says, any recommendations on books for sales strategies and techniques? We talked about Never Split the Difference. What's another one, Daniel, that you might like if you've got one?
In regards to books for negotiations, one of the ones that I like that not many people talk about is What Everybody is Saying. That is 4 words, what every new word body is saying. It comes from an FBI interrogator that looks at body language to determine people's motives, looking at key triggers, looking at the hands, the face, the hands, the legs, and then seeing what the body is doing, because most people have been taught to control their face, but most people are not taught to control their hands, legs, and posture. So when you look at people and you're having a conversation with them, studying their body language can give you often a tell as to how that person is feeling. So that's not going to help you much from a phone call standpoint, but it definitely helps you out when you're sitting down across from a seller and you're trying to feel where that seller is at in this conversation. The body language will tell you that. Another one that Grant introduced me to, which was Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. I still like that. There were like 7 key principles that were brought to light in that book, and I still use a lot of those to this day. Like, one of the things that I like to do is when I'm headed to an appointment is stop by a gas station on the way there and call the seller at the gas station and be like, hey, I had to stop for gas. Is there anything I can get you? Would you like a water? Would you like a drink? Would you like something like that? And what that does is that opens up that layer. There were 2 things brought up in Influence. One of them is feed somebody and they'll feel like they need to reciprocate that. And then B, you give somebody something and they feel like they need to give you something back. So like, you give them a Coke, and while that Coke might be very small, it opens up the door and it opens that reciprocity up fast. So those are 2 books that I like to touch base on.
Yeah, Influence is my Bible. I think that that's the best one. And he had a follow-up called Persuasion, which is also very good, but I think Influence is my favorite one on that. Last question here that we've got, we'll address today, is from Matt saying, are your questions different from inbound and outbound calls? I think that's a good question to have. I don't think so. I think you on an outbound call, you may have to do a little bit more setup to get to the situation where you're going to be able to ask these questions that we've given you examples of. Just with like introducing yourself, because they have not decided if they are willing to give you the time of day yet. Whereas with an inbound call, they've already decided they're going to give you the time of day. So you got a couple more discovery questions. My biggest advice for that on outbound calling and cold calling is again, I've got a big stick up my rear about being honest. So do not say, I drove by your house and I really liked it and I want to buy it, right? A, that's a lie. And B, it gives them too much power in the negotiation. What I would like you to start saying is, hey, this is how I open up my cold call situations, and it almost always got them to say, yeah, they're willing to talk to me, right? So I would say, hey, I spend all day sifting through, I started with, hey, I'm sorry, you don't actually know me, but I spend all day sifting through public records. I like buying houses, and I really like your neighborhood. So I spend all day looking through public records, and I found your name out there. And have you ever considered selling your house? I like using have you ever considered selling your house? It's a yes or no question, but I like using it because most people at some point in time have considered it. So it's usually a yes, and then you can go from there. And even if they say no, then you've got a response that you're able to follow up. Oh, baby boy, I'm sorry, Uriah. Then you can follow up that no with, well, hey, then good. I'm glad that we're talking, because right now is actually a really good time for you to consider that option. Being that we're kind of right at the end of this really super hot market. Everybody's sort of anticipating over this next 12 to 18 months, prices are going to start dropping. So now would probably be a really good time for you to consider getting the most out of your house that you can likely get for the next 5 or 7 years. Nobody knows what's happening in the future, but that's kind of a likely scenario. So, then you can find whatever rapport way you want to go into talking about it from there. This oftentimes happens with the pre-foreclosure leads, right? Because you're doing like the pre-foreclosure is a little bit more time sensitive. You kind of need to get in there on the phone. So we don't expose that we know that they're in the foreclosure process until if they are like kind of pushing off a little bit and that kind of stuff. And then we gradually more and more so expose like, well, you know, because they're going to say, where did you get my number? And you're like, well, you'd be surprised what Big Brother is on Google these days. Like you can find pretty much anything. And they're like, I'm not interested. Then you can say something along the lines of, well, I'll be honest. The way that I found this is that, you know, in my public record search, there's a thing called an appointment of substitute trustee, and it's the very, very first step that a bank takes in their decision to start taking a property to auction. And so, you know, I don't want to be abrasive or anything there, but the bank is starting to consider that. So if you've been having trouble with payments or anything like that, like I said, I really love your neighborhood. You did a really good job of buying in a neighborhood that a guy like me wants to buy in. So I'm an easy out for you. I'm your easy button, and I can get this taken care of for you. And if they're like, I've already got it taken care of, then you start the questions that Daniel gave. Okay, well, then what's the plan? How are you going to get this taken care of? And it either exposes to them that they don't have a plan, or it gives you what the plan is. And if that plan is bankruptcy, it's great. Now you get to start educating them what a bankruptcy is going to do versus selling it to you via sub-2 or whatever it is. So there's just one kind of logic path that may be different on a cold call than would be on an inbound call. So Daniel, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we kind of turn this in, just to summarize what we've talked about today?
I mean, this particular topic had the opportunity to be just absolutely riddled with back to back nuggets. So I've got plenty that I could say, but we're out of time.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, again, if you appreciate our experience, if you appreciate the ability that we have to kind of bring that to the table and give that to you, remember, you know, subscribe. We're always going live Wednesdays. Usually it's at 11. I had a closing this morning, and it was a big closing that I needed to actually personally be involved with. So I had to push us a little bit late. We did 11:30 today. But it's 11 a.m. Central. Every Wednesday we do Grant Teach Me Something. You're going to see it on the Propelio group's Facebook group. You're going to see it on Propelio on YouTube. So go sign up for those. Do the little bell on YouTube to get notified. And again, none of this stuff happens if it's not for the visionary that Daniel is, to put all of these things together and really push forth that. He's put a huge investment of time and money and everything into this this culture that Propelio has done such a good job of creating, of that go-giver attitude, and making sure that you guys have education that previously would have cost you $50,000, $60,000 to get absolutely for free. So please, as we talk reciprocation, please throw him a bone. If you're not a user of Propelio, go check out Propelio, because legitimately Propelio is one of the best pieces of software in the entire real estate investing business that you can have to support you in getting to that next level, because it's got your comps, it's got your websites, you can get your own My Home Buyer's email address. It's got some CRM functionality, and they just did a bunch of huge revamps here with some like driving for dollars, great opportunities, some lists. You get 150,000 leads a day that you're able to download, something like that. So it's an incredible product. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm very picky with who I work with and who I associate my brand with. I like these guys. I like what they're doing, and it's a good deal. So you can even get it for a trial. You go and you put your, I think it's just an email, right? And then they get in for a trial to check it out. And then I guarantee you're going to want to put that into your circulation for your team to use. Outside of that, my name is Grant Kemp from creativecashflow.com. Again, check it out, creativecashflow.com. We do education to help people, particularly in the niche of owner financing. But again, if you like how I teach things, I would love to teach you more and have some more interactions with that. So thank you guys for being here. We love having these interactions. We love everything about that. Share this video if you think that it's something that somebody might need to see. And I guess we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you so much.